like to welcome everybody back for our final session of the day in the Government Hub, sponsored by Oracle Cloud. Today we're going to be welcoming a panel with leadership from across the intelligence community who will be speaking on their IC cloud strategies. Joining us will be Mr. Mark Chatelain, NGA's Chief Information Officer and Director of Chief Information Officer and IT Services Component, Linnea Jones, Chief Information Officer and Director, Information Technology Enterprise, CIA, and Jennifer Crone, Deputy Chief Information Officer, National Security Agency. Moderating the panel today will be Nick Buck. Mr. Buck is President and Chief Executive Officer of Buck Consulting Group, where he leads a cadre of highly qualified experts focused on improving industry partner mission relevancy as a path to scaling business. Nick is recognized expert of federal procurement, market development, mission systems, and information technology. His know the market, go to market practice leveraged decades of government procurement experience to inform product strategies, enhance client value propositions, and improve customer engagements. Nick also volunteers as the co-chair of USGIF's NRO Industry Advisory Group and has been an evolution and enterprise skill and has been a principal author in numerous papers involving agile software acquisition, business model evolution, and enterprise scale cloud adoption. Nick completed a 26-year career with the Navy, where he served as a naval aviator, test pilot, major defense acquisition program manager, and source selection authority. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Buck and our esteemed panel.
Sit down. All right.
Yeah, thank you for the great introduction, and I appreciate that very much. And it's really exciting to be back here again this year with Jennifer and Mark, and now we have the IC service provider for C2E, Linnea Jones, with us. And for those who weren't here last year, we had this panel, and the questions were really pointed questions, and the interaction was outstanding. And so we thought about, hey, what has happened over the course of last year? And if you remember, we actually said to industry, hey, let's take up some of these topics. I think it was actually Fred Ingham who kind of challenged us as industry partners to go figure this out. Fred, unfortunately, was called back for operational reasons, but he did give us his thoughts, so we will channel those the best we can. And so for the industry partners, I also want to recognize the hybrid multi-cloud action team. 25 to 30 members of industry. You guys stepped up right after the conference last year and started putting the content together. One of them, and we have a few copies of it, is the decision framework for selecting your infrastructure. So it's like an ISO standard kind of thing. So there's a limited number of copies up here, but it's also available online. So with that, I'd like to just jump right into it. Panelists. So last year we had a number of areas that required attention in the cloud, such as portability, governance, delivery models, cloud economics, and workforce gaps. So if you could just introduce yourself, what you've been focusing on over the last year, and kind of for Jen and Mark, what's the progress that you've seen?
Good afternoon, I'm Jennifer Crone. I'm the Deputy CIO at NSA. It's a role that I've been in for just about 2 years now. Prior to this, I've been at the Office of the Director of National Intelligence since its inception, so about 16 years, and before that I was at the Office of Management and Budget. I've had a varied career that encompasses technology as well as resource management and mission, but despite all of those exciting jobs, there's been really nowhere more interesting to work than NSA right now with what we're doing on our hybrid compute initiative. So really happy to have the chance to chat with you all about how we're coming along on that. NSA's had a really clear vision of how we wanted to work our mission and our business and enterprise through various compute platforms. And what's been new in the last year is really seeing some of that come to fruition. Our idea is you want the right computing platform for each purpose, the right cloud for each mission, and figuring out what is the right thing for each of that. So our hybrid compute initiative encompasses the entire range of different compute options. So it ranges from commercial cloud, including C2S, C2E, as well as our own purpose-built TS cloud. It also encompasses our hardware as a service platform, which is off-prem, but we don't own and run it, but it is hardware as a service, bare metal. Then there's also the missions that we're still keeping on-prem, at least for now. So we're looking across this entire spectrum when we're thinking about where is the best place to put each of our missions, each of our functions, and we're looking at it from a functional perspective. Our top focus right now is moving, and has been for the last year, is moving our core mission services and programs off-prem and into the combination of our commercial cloud and the hardware as a service that we procured through the Wild and Stormy acquisition that some of y'all may have heard of. So we've started to really see that come to fruition. Data centers are coming online and we're starting to move our mission over to there. So that's been our big accomplishment and our big focus, and is going to continue to be for the next year or so. I would say that the benefits that we see from moving to the various off-prem is that, first of all, we're getting NSA and government out of the business of running data centers. That's not what we do best. We want to be able to focus on mission and allow industry to do what it does best as much as we can, which is owning and operating data centers. It also allows us, most importantly, to maximize security, performance, and efficiency. Note, I didn't say cost savings, I said efficiency. It's very different, and I know we're going to be talking about that a little bit later. And then finally, by going to a variety of platforms that are off-prem, we're able to leverage the best of what industry has to offer, as well as individually what each company does best within the industry profile. So the IC Gov Cloud is where our primary mission programs and services are. We've been in the process of moving those off-prem. IC Gov Cloud it was not really aptly named in the beginning, but now it is finally actually becoming a cloud, and that we're moving a lot of it to commercial cloud. It provides not only NSA, but the entirety of the IC with a high-performance platform for big data analytics, data fusion, data discovery, and we're moving it off-prem, and that's been a huge focus of ours. But that's not our only mission partners, the ones we're working with for commercial cloud and for hardware as a service. We also have mission partners with whom we're working on our human capital management and on our office products. So we have been working towards having a good balance across a number of vendors, and we look forward to working with many more of you all. So the last 12 months have really been about going from NSA having a vision of how we were going to align each of the different parts of our architecture with the right computing solution, and starting to see that truly come to fruition.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Mark and Linnea, I'm going to ask you a different question since you weren't here last year. Go ahead, Mark.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much. My name is Mark Chatelain. I am the CIO for the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency. I've been in the role for 15 months and about 20 days. So, again, 3 days.
Not that you're counting.
3 days into the role, our director tore up my new guy card. And so, again, I've been living through the dream for quite a while now. Over the past year, we've made a significant progress in deciding what we're going to do with cloud within NGA. We've been focusing solely on our cloud strategy, how we are going to implement our C2E across our enterprise, what it's going to mean to the existing contracts and things we have in place, and then where we're going to be going in the future. As part of that strategy, we held a Cloudy Days opportunity for all of the cloud service providers to come to NGA, tell us what they're all about, provide training to our workforce so the workforce could understand all of the services they offer and where we're going with things. In addition to that, what we did is we are continuing developing our financial operations, or our FinOps capability, to understand what the financial piece of each one of these clouds bring to us. Because we got to understand where we're spending our money and how we can most efficiently spend our money. And so that's one of the things we've been doing. We already awarded a multi-cloud integration contract. And again, it stood up our MC3, or our multi-cloud capability center. Some people affectionately call it our CCOW, or our coalition of, or our cloud coalition of the willing. We hope to get plenty of progress out of this and how it's going to influence our strategy going into the future. Again, the bottom line is we've been very busy not only operating our C2S capabilities, but figuring out where we're going to be going within the next couple of years from a cloud enterprise across our organization. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And then from Fred Ingham, passed along his major accomplishment is really a tip of the hat to the C2E provider with the number of clouds being accredited this year. So we truly, last year when you think about it, we talked multi-cloud, but we only had really one to go. This year we actually have 4 instances on the TS Fabric, so that was his input. So Linnea, the question for you over the last year, what were some, like from a C2E, getting all that online, lessons or kind of challenges you ran into?
Sure. So first and foremost, I want to thank you, Nick, as well as USGIF, as well as Jennifer and Mark for the panel. You asked what's been going on. A lot has been going on. So you asked about some of the challenges, and old IC DoD veteran, these are opportunities to excel. These are not challenges, opportunities they are, right? So when we started the C2E program, it was awarded in the fall of 2000, and so we were in a very different landscape as a nation, as a world, that was still within the pandemic era, if you would. And so really after those first few years, many of the IC elements had different schedules, had just different operating protocols and procedures due to social distancing and things going on. And so over the last year, we've definitely made huge progress. Nick, you mentioned, we do have multiple vendors with accredited clouds on both the secret and top secret realms. Although it goes without saying, I do want to say that we also have unclassified clouds that were always available. And I always say that because I want to make sure people realize that they're actually an easier lift when we work with industry to have their unclassified clouds available. And so that's always been the case. But with the secret and TS clouds available, you asked what are some of the challenges? Well, in one instance, we are very excited about working with world-class technologies, and really it's the scaling and the scoping, as well as I always keep in mind that this is a partnership not just across the IC, but the C2E program office serves the entire intelligence community and now works in partnership with DoD through the JWCC program as well. And so with that being the case, we're always working with ICCIO, the Office of the Intelligence Community CIO office. And so although we at CIA do shepherd a lot of that and do have accreditation for some of the lower classified items, we do have to work in partnership with ICCIO for some of the higher classified, which is working with the ICCIO and the ICCISO for the accreditation. So challenges, I would say balancing and scale, but I do think that we're off to a great start, and that getting all of the clouds accredited into that same place as far as having the infrastructure available is a great place to be where we are now. We look forward to now having more capabilities, services, offerings that we can offer throughout not just, again, the IC, but even across the DoD landscape and the services.
Well, and like all good challenges, you knock one down and you create a couple of others, particularly, for example, with terminology and use cases. And that can be a real source of misalignment across agencies and services, et cetera. And Jennifer, you made some great points about the different types of infrastructure. And then the action team, the NIAC action team came up with some use cases, because I really said, well, let's talk about reality of what we're actually going to do with these clouds. And so, for example, one was a hybrid cloud case where it was a mission thread comprised of different segments running on different clouds. Another one was a high-side SaaS, so there's a series of these. So question for you all is, how do you use these terms multi-cloud and multiple cloud, and how does that apply to your use cases?
I'll kick this off because I have some pretty strong views, as Nick knows. This is an issue that we in the IC have gone a number of rounds on, and I think we've come to a place where we are all seeing it roughly the same way based on our experience. So multi-cloud in some cases means you're talking about multiple segments, each at in a different platform, and you're assuming that you're going to be able to just work a mission through a variety of clouds seamlessly. Totally portable, totally transparent. We don't think that that is really feasible. It seems like it's going to be very difficult in terms of security, in terms of configuration management. What we
I'm going to caveat that is speaking from an NSA point of view, right?
Yes, I'm speaking for NSA 100%.
You like this?
Yes, that is our concern. As I said, we think that we were looking for the best platform for each of the missions. And we're a little concerned that if you're trying to focus on being able to run something in multiple different clouds, you could end up with this in a situation where you're going to the lowest common denominator. In terms of, instead of purely leveraging what is the best athlete in each of your different areas. So that's our concern with managing it at too granular a level. And so that's why we're looking at, when we're thinking of where we're going to put different bits of our architecture, we're looking at bigger chunks, and we're looking at it functionally in terms of what different programs and systems need to talk to each other, need to be near each other, and then having the government as the integrator. I was thinking about this a little bit on the plane ride down yesterday, and I came up with the analogy of a baseball team. That when you have a baseball team, you don't want to field a team where everybody is completely interchangeable and where they can all do the same things. You want to have the best athlete in each of those positions. And in this analogy, we, the government, we're the coach, we're the integrator. It's our job to ensure that each of the players is the best at their position and that they're all working together towards a common goal. I think in the way that we want to achieve interoperability is through standards. It's through common data standards, through common coding standards, through common INA standards. So that's what we think is going to be the best way to go. We absolutely 100% are in and are living the multiple cloud dream. The idea being that we're going to have, and we already do have, a number of different vendors across the spectrum providing cloud and other types of platforms. We intend to leverage each of them in the way that is best for each individual mission. So that's how NSA is seeing it so far, based on our perspective, with government as the integrator, and some of big chunks of our architecture going to commercial cloud or hardware as a service or to on-prem as necessary. But over to you, Linnea, for the CIA perspective.
Sure. So again, I try in some cases to remain Switzerland, right? Because coming from the CTE Program Management Office, we do leverage cloud capabilities across multiple vendors. So we do use multi-cloud, and actually NGA has an example of that. They have situations where they're running, for instance, AWS infrastructure with Oracle Cloud on top of that in some cases. And so it's happening every day, whether we realize it or not. Another example is, for many years, we've leveraged the C2S cloud provider, which is Amazon Web Service, AWS. And as you all know, we are heavily using Microsoft products and tools and capabilities. And so as we go on this journey and mature, we've always had multi-cloud solutions or multi-solutions, vendor solutions, and we just want that to go on. Now, we also use multiple clouds, but we want to keep the gates open to be able to leverage whatever tools, applications, infrastructure, architecture, whether it be hardware, in whichever situation that best meets the need, but really to work together. And we also see that in industry. There's several partnerships between Microsoft and Oracle. There's other partnerships between, Anthropic and AWS. And so we are very excited about what all the cloud service providers, even with Google, Google is also bringing in their AI capabilities, which we have not used before in this fashion or framework. And so for us, we would like to really leverage the best capabilities that each vendor, each company, and these are just a small fraction of the thousands of vendors that we work with, and it really is a partnership. The challenges that we face today are too big and too much for one vendor, one company to do on their own, and so it'll have to be a partnership between many cloud providers.
And I think that gets exactly to what you were saying about the semantics, because what you're describing right there is probably more what I would have thought of as multiple cloud. Because I think of multi-cloud as being when you have one mission that is going seamlessly among different clouds, and I think part of what we're talking about, and 100% agree, is about different elements of the stack. That you're not going to, and leveraging the best of every single vendor from the infrastructure all the way on up to the software level.
So thank you both. I appreciate that. Again, semantics is a real big issue. We've got to work through that. But the bottom line is we've got to deliver a capability for our analysts to be able to produce their intelligence. Whether you're NSA, CIA, or NGA, you've got to be able to deliver that capability. And you've got to pick the right function. You can't be dependent on picking a lowest common denominator across the board to be able to deliver a capability. In most cases, you have to be able to deliver what the analysts need. And so Linnea pointed out some very good points as far as how we're doing something called multi-cloud. Again, we're running Oracle capabilities within an Amazon set of infrastructure. We're actually using Microsoft in other situations. And again, within our Maven program, we're actually using some Google AI capabilities. And so it's just important that we pick the right athlete for the job. I loved your analogy, Jennifer. Again, pointing out that it's like a baseball team. We've got people playing various different positions. We can move people around if we need to, but again, you got to pick the best athlete. Thank you.
No, that's great. And so it's English for everybody, but let's keep in mind, it's probably a good thing when you're talking to somebody and you're sure you're in agreement to maybe just double check that you're actually saying the same thing. So it brings up the question though, with such a diverse range of options, not just the clouds, but Jennifer, as you pointed out, all the different hybrids. We're going to have a problem if we have everybody in this room is making a cloud or an infrastructure selection on some criteria that's in their head. And then the government's saying, well, why did you make that decision, right? So it becomes a little Tower of Babel. So quickly after the last session last year, the action team got to work and put together a decision framework. There are some hard copies up here for those who like it. We can also get it from USGIF, but it's basically built around architecture, business, and performance, and the criteria to select your infrastructure. So that way, a program maybe has that standard. Everybody knows what the criteria is for that particular workload. With that in mind, the question is, like, there's a hot topic right now, the requirement to compete infrastructure for new and existing programs. And so how would you see this implemented? You mentioned functional groups and that type of thing. How would you all see that actually playing out in practicality?
So I'll share where we are. So the question was asking about how are we competing, right? So the C2S program is coming to an end. And so with that, we've been transitioning or looking at the options availability for now C2E for the past 4 years. Again, although it doesn't feel like it, or maybe it does, we're 4 years into that. And so our goal is to look at not just infrastructure for infrastructure, but please know that with C2E, kind of echoing the tagline, essential in all dimensions, all domains, C2E is much more broader from not just a domain, but also from a services perspective of what it offers. And so the goal with that is, in some cases, as Jennifer alluded to, there are different elements that are looking to bin services or bin options. In some cases, people are competing elements through RFI and looking at having blended services. And then we do have some of the intelligence community members as well as DoD that have done multi-award for different aspects of it. And so really it just depends on what's in need. Again, because C2S is not C2E, there's not a one-to-one transition. It is a very much larger, more encompassing, all-encompassing program. And so the goal of that was to not just subsume or be able to do that, but from a period of maturity, again, considering when we awarded and what was available at that time, to make use of the newer technologies and have an avenue and pathway to get there on that.
Thanks, Lene. I appreciate it. Since 2019, we've seen the writing on the wall that we're going to be moving to C2E. So in preparation for that, our CIO at the time, Mark Andrus, suggested we develop an enterprise assessment framework, coming up with a way that we can look at all of the different capabilities and options each of the vendors offer, and then be able to make a logical decision as far as where we're going to go, what workloads we'll use, what clouds, and what cloud capability. So it's worked out well for us. Again, we're just in the beginning stages of implementing that decision framework and actually publishing RFPs to put out for people to bid on those various workloads. Again, this decision framework has to be enacted pre-award. We can't do a decision framework and overlay it on an after-award thing, saying, well, do these vendors meet all these requirements? We have to know what's going to happen first. And so that decision framework is helping us put out our request for information, our request for proposals, and then help us evaluate those proposals.
Thanks. I don't have a whole lot to add. I will say that from the NSA perspective, most of the decision about our core mission services and programs as part of IC GovCloud have been made to date. It's all pretty much going to one of the aspects of our wild and stormy, which is either the commercial cloud part or the hardware as a service part. However, we have not yet decided where all of our business and enterprise functions are going to reside. Some of them we're started to work on, some of them we're still looking on. We're looking at those big segments of our architecture and what needs to stay together so that we can bid meaningful bits all together. So that's how we're going to be leveraging C2E going forward. So the decisions that we're making, we're looking primarily at security, performance, and cost. Pretty much in that order, I would say. We do have an automated tool for determining that, but then we have a council that looks at what comes out of that automated tool to have a human in the loop, as they were talking about in some of the conversations this morning. So that's what we've been looking at from NSA, and ensuring that we're, again, using the best solution for each of the programs and looking at the full spectrum of opportunities that are available to us, from on-prem to off-prem, hardware as a service, C2S, wild and stormy, C2E.
The only thing I would add to that is a lot of times people will compare, and what I would say, for as much as there's in C2S as far as data, information, and utilization, that's just the tip of the iceberg for C2E. Also with C2E, we're looking at more from an expansive capabilities. And the reason why I say it that way is because we're looking at not just for, say, what some people would say, just enterprise or mission capabilities, but more from a global perspective of partnering with other directorates to even have more customized solutions. And so as Mark mentioned about Maven and those examples, without going to that, it is looking at the options and capabilities of what's being asked from other directorates, other mission centers, other places, to be able to look at finding those solutions within there, and we're just getting started.
So in this, Mark, there's a question that came in, kind of piggybacking on what Jennifer's talking about. Now that you have multiple CSPs on every classification level, how do you evaluate existing programs running in cloud for potential migration? I think we talked a little bit about this in the prep session, like you got an existing program, how do you evaluate whether you're going to move it?
So the first thing you have to look at is what is required, what are the various clouds can offer. Again, some of them offer capabilities that are only really found in one cloud. You don't really have a choice there. Again, those capabilities are satisfied. But if various cloud providers can provide the same capability, then you have to begin to peel back the onion and take a look at it. Like Jennifer mentioned, you have to look at first performance, then you have to look at do they meet all the requirements, then you have to take a look at the financial aspects of it. If it boils down to money, then you just need to look at that. But again, you're not making a commitment for just 1 year and then renew the capability the next year with somebody else. You're going to have to make a long-term commitment. And so it's like we do with reserved instances. If you could do a 3-year reserved instance, you're basically able to save your money, save your resources, and make a commitment to a cloud provider.
I think one thing to bring up too is one of the reasons why we pursued C2E is to have economies of scale. So the idea of CIA, NSA, or NGA competing for services in the tech space will never be as strong by ourselves as we would be together collectively as 18 elements, or looking across the services even. It's a different conversation. And so I just want to acknowledge that too, that one of the reasons why we're doing this is because we want to work together. We want there to be intrinsic knowledge, so that way from a government perspective, we are looking at the best way to spend our money in places, not just in silos, but working across the IC and across DoD.
So along in that spirit, then, if I do have a workload that I do decide to move, there's a question about and whether you want to. The word cloud agnostic. Most people don't like the word agnostic, but we talked about last year about portability, about neutrality, and taking full advantage of the diversity that you've got in the competitive environment. So if you made that decision, the question is code refactoring, egress fees, all these different potential barriers. Where are we in this movie? And this is really, if any particular one of you wants to answer this, in the movie, and how is it realistic to think that a program could actually migrate over time to a different infrastructure?
I'll jump on that one if you don't mind. So NGA has created something called our Common Operations Release Environment, or CORE. What that does is allows developers to maintain and develop containerized services that they basically deploy, and it doesn't matter which one of the clouds you deploy that to, because they're containerized. It's basically a Kubernetes containerized set of services. If they require cloud-specific functions or capabilities, then that's when you allocate them to a particular cloud. But again, that's going to give us some level of portability and neutrality across all of the different clouds.
I agree 100% on the importance of containerization to help improve interoperability and ensure that we aren't suffering too much of the effects of any sort of lock-in. I do want to say, I think so much of what we're talking about is just about finding the right balance, but to keep everybody entertained, we'll keep putting in really absolute terms. So something that we're concerned about at NSA, we want to ensure that we're not trading off performance for portability. We want to make sure that we're not saying, in order to keep our options open and not get locked in, that we are not going to leverage what's really the standout attribute of different vendors. What we want to do is achieve that balance across all of the variety of different vendors and different opportunities by capitalizing on what each one does best. And in doing that, yes, sometimes it's going to be more difficult if you need to pick up and do something else down the line. But anytime you're making a decision, you are sometimes getting into some lock-in, and if you've truly chosen the best performer in that area, sometimes it is worth going all in and making sure that you get that top performance, because the whole reason that we're going down this road, or a major reason why we're doing it, is to leverage the best of industry, to do what you only you all can do that we can't do for ourselves, and that's not broadly found. And the best way to do that is sometimes to go all in on what each one does best, and then we as the government playing the coach role in my baseball analogy, ensuring that everybody works together. And that's how, maybe in this case, the ball is containerization, so we can throw it from one to the other, but ensuring that interoperability, having the common data standards, looking at IDAM solutions that cross various clouds, but not necessarily having portability and easy ingress and egress being the most important attribute, because there are trade-offs that would be made.
Yeah, and so for those that are looking at the decision framework, that is one of data portability and egress is one of about 30 criteria, to your point. So speaking of industry, the best of industry, there's a trend that we can't ignore, which is the move towards software as a service. So most companies are sunsetting their on-prem versions at some point and going SaaS. We've started to see an emerging SaaS, high-side SaaS, I'll call it, like on-prem SaaS, where some vendors are basically hosting their software in C2E. And what that does is that basically goes with an all-in price for the software, and it kind of unifies that business model. So it can help, frankly, the vendor is the only one that's optimized, that's incentivized to optimize their cloud spend, because they don't want their price of their license to go up. So what are your thoughts on this? I mean, we've got a couple of examples that are already going on now. I don't know if we're allowed to say the names. But would you agree that high-side SaaS simplifies things? And I think, what's your take?
So the one thing, and this is also for the last conversation, and Nick, you said you wanted to have a conversation. This is one thing I would say about the ingress and egress fees. Whether we be government or industry, unless we communicate and talk about what capabilities we're really trying to do, I think there's ways that we can work with that and work with the industry in order to get there. I will say I've been heartwarmed to see many industry vendors saying, don't let that be the inhibiting factor to you pursuing a technology or wanting to have some sort of capability. And so I think that we're just having those conversations, but at no shape, just like with cybersecurity or security, we don't want that to be the reason why the national security community doesn't get the best in breed technology because of cost, because the cost is too high. At the end, this is about a bigger mission, a broader picture, and I just want to share that and keep that in mind. When we talk about the SaaS offerings and where we're at, we're in a different place today from a C2S to a C2E, and we have capabilities, and we also need to be agile with the way that we are looking at the solutions, right? So many of the conversations that you'll see here will talk about reliability, redundancy. We're looking at the multi-dynamic aspect from a global perspective of where we need to be. And also we need to work across, whether it be all three of these elements, but really across all, whether the warfighter or others. As spoken earlier, NGA by far is one of the largest and has been consistently the consumers of the secret cloud, and they will continue to be, and that's because their data and information is being directly shared with those who need it most, the warfighter out forward, if you would. And so I think as we talk about these SaaS solutions, if we look at making an infrastructure that's solid, stable, reliable, redundant, all the R's, all the nines, and shout out to any network people out there, you know you want all the nines, right? And so if you have that in place, then you can build agile capabilities, whether it be containerized or whether it be cloud solutions, whatever it be, but you need that foundation, that framework. That's what I'm hoping that we invest time and energy on, and that's when I think some of the larger vendors will bring to bear.
And it's, for those of you who remember the marketplace concept, when it first started, it's essentially what this is, right? So you can actually go to the marketplace, the software is already hosted, et cetera. The challenge may be, and I've heard from a number of industry partners today even about implementing the H clause and getting approvals to go in this direction. So Fred kind of expressed one of his concerns was getting accreditation for this high-side SaaS, and that's something that's got to be worked through. Any other barriers that you all see in terms of any reason why we can't do it?
There's not I will say in general, high-side SaaS, yes, please, we're all in. The less that government has to think about the technology, the more we can focus on mission and leverage industry, that's fantastic. Also, the second thing I'll say is it kind of doesn't matter how much we like it or not because it's coming. This is the direction. We might as well say we want everything coming on floppy disks, right? Like this is how things are going to be delivered to us.
No flop.
Okay. It's about that level of technology. So it's a good thing we like high-side SaaS because it is the direction that we're going. It's just not how we've done things before, and we're a very large bureaucracy that does some very innovative things. Sometimes we don't apply that same fervor for innovation to our business practices the same way we do to our technology. So a lot of the challenges we have when we're talking about a high-side SaaS as opposed to doing things on-prem just has to do with the fact that the way we do our budgeting and human capital and a lot of our other work, it's still the same way as Robert Cardillo had talked about this morning. In some cases, the way we've done it since the 1960s. So it's a lot of the challenges are about our business processes, how we run our enterprise, not being as innovative as the way that we're pursuing our technology. Over.
Well, and I want to jump to this next question just in the interest of time. This is an ongoing discussion, and I would say, industry, let's have a conversation after this about how, if you're a SaaS a vendor, an ISV, and you want to go into high side, we need to have a conversation about how to implement that so that it's not, again, it's not a Tower of Babel. Mark, last year on this stage, we talked about Edge, we talked about JREN. You pick up any kind of trade publication that says 80% of the data is going to be on the edge, AI, ML on the edge. You guys did a JREN demo last year. Kind of give us a progress report and what you expect for the next couple of years.
So thanks for the question. I really appreciate it. Again, JREN has been basically on the forefront of NGA's mind, especially within our CIO organization. Over the past year, again, we introduced JREN last year. We introduced it to exercises in the Indo-PACOM region. Since then, we've actually deployed and have operationalized JRENs at Indo-PACOM, UCOM, CENTCOM, and at USFK. And so again, that's a big deal to have all four of those operational. We've operationalized our identity access and management capabilities on those. Our common operation release environment is operational within each of those JRENs. We're in the process now of being able to demonstrate our capability to do something called Slim Gyms. It's basically our information management tasking system in a slimmed down version that rides on the JREN. It'll allow theater tasking of various capabilities and be able to downlink that data directly to those JRENs to provide that information to the warfighters. So again, at the end of this year's Valiant Shield exercise at Indo-PACOM, we will have demonstrated this capability. So again, we're doing the crawl, walk, run with this. It's not going to deliver a full capability all at once. Again, we're seeing where we can go and how fast we can deliver individual containerized capabilities for the advantages of our warfighters.
Exciting.
If I could add a little bit. So along with the efforts that Mark's doing at NGA, and we are supportive of that as well, we're also looking at triage at the edge, and so we're looking at all the cloud service providers, the ability to be able to triage large data sets at the edge because the reality is the idea of bringing back large amounts of data that may never be consumed is not where we want to be. We want to be able to have some of those deterministic decisions made at the edge, and so that way we can bring back what we need and use. The other aspect that I'll say you'll see more and large coming from CIA, our Deputy Director for Digital Innovation, Julian Galina, is very big on human-machine teaming. And so essentially human-machine teaming is essentially having humans, us, tied with generative AI capabilities in order to provide solutions. And so the human-machine teaming is our generative AI capabilities and making that available for our analysts, our operators, and whoever may need them to help with all of the data and information to help with that. And so I just wanted to add those two items because those are areas from an edge perspective that also help.
So we've been talking about mission, we've been talking about technical, we've been talking about operating models. Let's get kind of practical down to business. Jennifer, you talked a little bit about FinOps, I think, earlier on. The reality is every provider has a different accounting model, maybe a different pricing model, et cetera. And at some point, all of that's got to roll up to a single appropriation for an agency. I think commercial industry's been working on this for a long time. There's actually a not-for-profit called thefocus.org, and it's all about unifying how you can rationalize all the numbers. So kind of two questions here. One is really kind of a general question on how are the multiple clouds changing your business processes, and do you see a need for some kind of similar FinOps function where we can unify or normalize or rationalize, whatever the right word is, the money part of it?
Thanks for the question. I've spent probably more of my career on the financial management side than the IT side, and it's come in handy because I think more of the conversations we've been having around cloud in the last few weeks have been about the budget side of it than the technology. And forget about trying to deal with multiple clouds, just trying to figure out how to do financial for cloud in general has been incredibly challenging. And again, it's because it's not how we have really done it in the past. Some of the challenges are when your infrastructure is on-prem, everything is just covered by the enterprise, and so the individual programs and missions, they don't see what it's actually costing. Now with cloud, we're able to say exactly how much everybody is paying, and it can be a real wake-up call. Things can look like they're suddenly costing more because it's all in one place instead of just being covered by the enterprise. It's also true, and this is something that I think Fred would say if he was here, that when we've been paying for the infrastructure on-prem, sometimes we use that as a bill payer, and we kick down the road when we know we need to be doing security upgrades or refresh. We're able to say, yeah, we'll push that to next year. You all won't let us do that. The vendors hold us accountable. They say, this is when you're paying for this service, you're going to get what is secure and up to date. And so it actually can cost more because we're doing it right. And then when you're switching over from being on-prem to hardware as a service or cloud, whether it's through C2E or another way, sometimes you can't just flip a switch. You're going to have to pay for both for a while. And so that starts to make things look very expensive. So altogether, it's just an entirely new model of paying for IT. I'll say one more thing and then pass it over to my friends here, but we've been struggling within the CIO capability at NSA. How do we explain to some of our mission partners and our bosses the sheer excitement of having spent millions and millions and millions on the cloud, and when we switched over, nothing happened? Like, this is a great news story. You spent lots of money and nothing changed. Isn't that fantastic? They're not as excited when we share this news with them as we feel like they should be. So overall, we're really struggling with how we do this. And I was pleased to read a little bit more about FinOps in the last few days, and I think that really gets to what I was saying before. We need to be as innovative on our business processes to keep pace with the innovation in our technology.
The only thing I'll say is a lot of times in the intelligence community and even in the DoD ecosystem, we talk about the on-prem and off-prem. And please know that all of us have aspects of the work that we provide both on-premises and off-premises. It's always a blend, and we continue to see that going on. You know, there will never probably be a case where there will be one way or the other. It should always probably be a hybrid because we want the agility and because sometimes the sensitivities of the mission call for that. And so I just continue to echo that we look at that as an advantage in some cases. We applaud the vastness of industry and how they're able to provide a data center or a containerized solution within months compared to perhaps the years or decades it may take us. but also in the same aspect, there are some things that will never be able to go off premises because of the nature of the work. And so, again, it'll always be a blend.
100%. I'm going to add one more thing to your adding on. So having been around at ICCIO back when C2, we were just talking about C2S back in the, when dinosaurs roamed the earth. And I remember, well, first Sue Gordon back in like 2016 said NGA is all in. NGA is all in on the cloud. She was absolutely visionary. But in general, people were back then saying, well, we might have some things we can move to the cloud, but there's so much that's just always going to have to stay on-prem. And I 100% agree with you, some things will always stay on-prem, but I've definitely seen a change over the last 10 years in how much we think has to.
No, thank you both. I really appreciate the comments there. Just real quickly, it really matters how you can be able to predict and forecast what your cloud costs are going to be. On day one, when Sue Gordon said all into the cloud, we had no idea what it was going to cost. We estimated we might have been off by 100%. But again, over the years, we've gotten better at predicting what those models are going to be, getting our costs constrained, making sure that software developers don't leave that GPU running for a long weekend and charging us $50,000. Again, what we've got to do is bring that cost curve down. We've got to have a good understanding so we can forecast and predict what our cloud costs are going to be. So again, our oversight understands exactly what we're doing and knows what we're doing.
If I could say one thing, I did, along with my colleagues, had the pleasure and honor of working with Sue Gordon when she was the PDD&I. And what I would say is sometimes it takes a bold statement like that to create change. And that's what it did, and that has moved us to a better place. And so that was a positive effect. Again, I was there too, like the how, the what, the when, the where, the why. You may not know, but it takes that sometimes to create change in the ecosphere.
Absolutely, and that's something that my current boss does too as well. Sometimes if you shoot for the stars, you'll at least get to the moon.
So I'm gonna suggest that after this conversation, the industry team, we've got a lot of work to do this year around this topic, because I think everyone in this room is a stakeholder of this question. We're just about out of time. I was lobbying for another 10 minutes so you can go get some beers and come back. But I don't.
Just so we know, I don't know what time Nick's looking at, because like our clock is doing crazy things.
Yeah. But there was a question from that. We were going to talk a little bit about workforce, and any conversation would be incomplete if you don't talk about workforce. So just real quick, the question about how is the government looking at developing technical skills to apply across the multiple clouds? And specifically, there was a question about how government employees are going to do requirements development and manage the programs on the cloud. So just anyone.
So from NGA standpoint, when Amazon came in with the C2S contract, part of our contract was actually to provide training for our workforce. We must have done over 700 different sessions with our workforce to be able to get them trained on cloud architecture, cloud services, even the financial operations side of it. So that paid dividends over many, many years. And again, we're going to be doing exactly the same thing with all of our C2E vendors as they come on board, provide that training.
It's been our experience as well that the cloud service providers provide awesome training, and it's just one of the challenges we have in the government is in trying to figure out who we have, which training they should go to, and how we can free them up from their day jobs in order to do it. There is great training out there. It's sometimes hard for us to send the right people, and then we need to have folks who are specialized in each of the individual offerings, but then also folks who know how to work across. So it's an ongoing challenge.
The only thing I was going to say was completely echo what my colleagues say. There isn't anyone that I meet with from a product, capabilities, or services, or a company that I always ask about training. We cannot use the tools, products, and services if we don't know how. And so that goes across the gamut. Training is foundational, just like security.
All right, so we've got a number of questions here that came in, and unfortunately we don't have the time to go through them. But if you ask a question, we're gonna take those and give the panelists an opportunity to give answers to those questions. So thank you for bringing those in. I would like to personally thank the panelists on behalf of the community for your leadership and investing the time to share your thoughts. You know, most of the companies in this room are working across all the agencies, and so instead of taking it one at a time, and there's our answer, right? Instead of taking one at a time, it's really helpful when we take a technology, we can hear it from across the agency. So everybody, round of applause for our panelists. And I look forward to working with you in the harm reduction cloud team this year, and we're looking forward to getting together again this time next year for great progress. So thanks and have a great happy hour.